Hi Flosstube, my name is Nitya and you're here at my Flosstube channel, Daybreak Stitchery. It's the end of June and normally we would be talking cross stitch right about now, and that's definitely coming up in a few days, my end of the month Flosstube cross stitch video. But today I'm doing something a little different. A couple of videos ago I mentioned while I was packing up to move, I mentioned just coming across a lot of my knit and crochet projects, and I have been slowly putting them aside to show you, so that's what I'm going to show you today. So I don't usually show knit and crochet, but I just have a bunch, and I thought you might be interested. Even if you're not a knitter or crocheter, stick around, hopefully, because I just love visiting with you and hearing from you, and hopefully you'll find this interesting. I'm just excited to share this stuff with you. I have my my regular Flosstube video is going to be coming up in a couple of days, before the end of the month, but I might be cutting it close by the end of the month. But I've been on break and I've been stitching a lot, so that video will have a lot to share with you. But I have a lot here to share with you too. So I crochet, and I'm a very poor knitter, but I knit, and I have a little bit of both to show you. So crochet, in case you don't do crochet, here's an example of a crochet. This is just like a block that I created. This is the, let me think. It's by Addie's Crochet on Etsy. And I think it's called the hexagon, the mesmerized hexagon motif. But I pick up patterns everywhere. I pick up books. I pick up patterns on Etsy. I use Ravelry sometimes too. And this just happens to be an Etsy pattern. And you can tell crochet is crochet when you look at it, because there's usually, if you look at a stitch, it'll have like this horizontal bar on the top. And then sometimes, like this is a double crochet, so it has a few more like kind of wraparound bits here. But crochet is recognizable because of these teeth. See these two little teeth right here that attach it to the next row? And each row has that. These little teeth right here that attach it, and then these blue-green, they have the teeth that attach to the next row. That's my way that I can tell that something is crocheted, because it's how it attaches to the next row. Or even if it's like a lacy pattern, somewhere at some point there will be something attaching it to the piece. So those little teeth are kind of the giveaway for me. I think this might be using wool ease yarn, which I get at like my local craft store. It's like you can get it at Michael's or Joann. And it's just easy to use wool. And I probably used like a size J hook. So crochet, okay. If you're not a crocheter or knitter, crochet and knit are like, you use yarn, of course, but the big difference is the tools that you use. So for crochet, you use a hook. I'm trying to see if I can show you a hook. Those of you who already do this, you're going to already know. But for those of you who don't know, I can show you. So like this is a hook. And I don't know if you can see how it has like a little hook on it here? There you go. You can kind of see when I hold it. So when you crochet, you're using a hook, and like let's say I wanted to add another row around this, I would loop in my yarn, and my yarn is always being manipulated using my hook. And I'm just using it to weave the yarn in and out of here. So my piece is always in my hand, and the hook is basically just manipulating the yarn. The piece doesn't really hang off my hook, if that makes sense. So you're always like, I'll always just have a loop of yarn here that's ready for the hook to join and just kind of start weaving through. So I really like crochet because I find that it's easier to travel with. Like since it's not attached to my hook, or attached to a needle, all you need to do is like attach, like loop a new thing of yarn, and you can just, it can always be separate from the yarn, if that makes sense. So this is one example of a crocheted item. Let me show you a couple more. I found so many random, like I have 4 or 5 of these that I made, but not enough to put together to make a blanket. I must have just bought like one skein of each of these, and then I don't know. I have so many ideas. It's like with my cross stitch too, I have so many ideas for projects I want to do, and then I just like, you know, start them and don't finish them. This is a really cute, so like a very typical pattern in crochet is a granny square. So this is a granny square, and these granny square patterns you can find, like just Google, you can find, it's like the most basic square pattern. And it's basically the same idea. You start with a loop in the center, like just a loop of yarn, but you're working your stitches into that loop. So it creates a circle. And do you see how you can recognize, like there's the bar at the top and then the teeth hooking it into the next row? That's how you can tell it's crochet. This was using a cotton blend. So it's like acrylic blend blended with cotton yarn. It was really easy to work with. It might be cotton. It might be Bernat Cottonese. Maybe. I'm not 100% sure. Isn't it cute? Stuff like this I'll make into like pot holders. Like I'll make a few of these squares. I have a lot of pot holders I've crocheted up in the kitchen. I should have brought some of them down. I have a couple more crochet things I can show you. I don't know what this is, but it's pretty. This square. I wasn't able to find what pattern this came from. Probably something I should look on. If I find it while I'm editing my video, I'll put it below. But you can get a lot of, like, so this is an enormous granny square, right? You can make granny squares any size you want. I used a smaller yarn on this and used a smaller hook, so it came out small. But this one I used a little bit bulkier of a yarn. This is like a worsted weight yarn, so it's a little thicker, and probably used a bigger hook then, and then just made more rows going around. So I could have stopped my granny square here, but instead the pattern had more rows, so I just kept adding them. And then if you do a lot of squares, like I don't know exactly why I didn't continue this, because it's pretty. I'll have to see if I can find it and maybe make more of these. This is just an acrylic yarn. It's soft. It's pretty soft. So if you do more of these, I have actually finished a blanket, everybody. I mean, several. I've made multiple blankets. I used to make blankets to enter into the state fair here in Illinois. And I won't say too much about that now because I'm going to try to make a separate video all about the state fair. But I will show you, this is one blanket that I've made before. It's so bulky. Let me see if I can hold it up so you can actually see the pattern in it. And this one too, now I should have looked up, I will look up the name of this pattern and share it with you. I think this came from a Ravelry pattern, but I'll look it up. A lot of patterns that when I was crocheting a lot more than stitching, I would save patterns on my Pinterest page, which I'll link below too, just in case you want to poke around there and see what patterns. So I've probably got it linked there. I just need to look it up. So you can do some interesting things with crochet. Like this is, let me see if that's what I did. You can set up the stitches so that different parts of the stitch are highlighted. So see how this creates kind of like a line here? It's that bar that's usually across the top of the crochet stitch, but I stitched something underneath it, so it highlights that a little bit, pushes that out a little bit. So you can the hook is really useful. You can manipulate it to do lots of interesting things and make your stitching interesting. This blanket is super warm. It's using, I think some of it is woolies, like this mustard color is woolies, and then some of it is like a merino. I think it might be a merino wool. I have to look up because I was using a Bernat easily washable wool or something like that. I don't exactly remember what I was using. But that was really fun. Making blankets to enter into the fair was really fun, but I'll talk about that in another video. So that's crochet. Once you learn some basic stitches, you could just use a YouTube video. I learned crochet from my mom when I was a kid. And she used to make, like when we were babies, she used to make us baby blankets and like little sweaters and things. So she was a really good crocheter. And I have some of her books, like leaflets and books from the 70s, which I think is really cool. Maybe one day I'll make something from there. Interesting thing that happened recently with my mom. I was over there. I go over probably once a week to go see her. And so we were chatting and she pulls out this cross stitch pattern. And she's like, Nitya, can you show me how to do this? I'd like to do, oh no, because I think my sister gifted her a cross stitch pattern. And I was like, Mom, didn't you teach me? What do you mean? Didn't you teach me? I thought you taught me how to cross stitch. She said, oh no, you just used to go pick up, I guess I used to go to the craft store. When I was really little, it used to be a Frank's Nursery and Crafts. That was the chain that was around. And I think I'm self-taught in cross stitch, which was news to me. I didn't realize that. So, but crochet, definitely my mom taught me. But if you don't know how to crochet, you can find, there's so many videos now. And I can certainly help too if you want to start crocheting. And crochet hooks are really affordable, just for like a couple of dollars. You can find a crochet hook. You could probably find crochet hooks at your like thrift stores too, with people giving away stuff. So if you start, let me know. I'm curious about who crochets out there, and you know, if you don't and you get started, I want to know about it. Okay, so if you learn some basic crochet stitches, you can start making other things. This is an enormous hat. Look how big it is. It's too loose, but it is very warm. And it's a pattern by, oh, messed up my hair, by Jonah, who is, his channel on Flosstube and his website is called Jonah's Hands. He's this little 12-year-old kid, and he does demos. He does cross-stitch demos. He makes like enormous blankets. He makes everything. He makes everything. So I wanted to do one of his patterns. So I made this hat. And I had to actually decrease the stitches quite a bit. If I had followed his pattern, it would have been like probably like a bag or something. But this is cute for like walking around the neighborhood and stuff. I'll wear this hat. I wear a lot of my crochet stuff because it gets so cold in Chicago. So I'll just have it to throw on when I'm walking around. But this these colors. There's no way I would have put these colors together by myself. I wouldn't have known how to, and they're beautiful, right? They come, is this from, well, they come from a cake. So Karen brand yarns, I'll show you, this isn't the same one, but I use a lot of these cakes. They make these yarn cakes where they already pick out multiple colors and put them into one big cake of yarn. So there's like a little bit of each color. So as you're crocheting, it automatically stripes for you. You don't have to think about color changes or anything. It's all one yarn. So the color change for you. So I love that. I use them a lot. Karen brand is the brand. I mean, a lot of brands make cakes. Like I've been following an independent dyer named Fiber Optic Yarns on Instagram, and they dye their own yarn and they weave them into cakes too, which I think is great because usually they come in skeins. A lot of yarns come in skeins. They have to unwind and then roll into balls. And I hate doing that. I feel like it's such a time waster, especially when you're excited to start a project and then you have to do that first. So these cakes are really nifty. And I use them a lot. I like all the color combinations. The names are really cute. They're all named after like desserts, sweets and desserts. So I think this one was maybe called plum pudding. I can't exactly remember, but anyway, but I'll link the video below if you're interested in just seeing a couple of, it's Jonah's Hands. And he gave a really great tip actually for something. I'll show that later. I'll show it with my knitting stuff. I'll come back to Jonah. Anyway, so there's this hat. Let me see if I've set aside any other crochet to show you. I don't think so. I have other crochet blankets, but I didn't bring them down. I don't think we've unpacked all of them, to be honest. So, so they're there. Maybe I'll show them. They'll make an appearance in future cross-stitch videos. Okay, so that's crochet, and I use a lot of crochet. I like crochet. It's easier for me. It's probably because I've been doing it the longest. I do also knit. I didn't grow up knitting, but I learned as an adult about 15 years ago now, maybe. A colleague and I decided to take private lessons at a local yarn shop. It was maybe like 10 or 15 bucks a session, and it was just my colleague and I, and then the shop owner. And they gave the class included a skein of yarn and a set of knitting needles, and then they just went through the basics. And because it was a private lesson, you just spent the whole hour practicing basic stitches, practicing like how to cast on, which is how to get the first row of stitches onto your needle, just like the most basic, how to cast off, how to like finish your project basically. It was really, really worthwhile. So if you're not a knitter and you want to learn how to knit, there's always YouTube. But it would be really cool if you could contact your local yarn shop and have that face-to-face instruction. I feel like that made an enormous difference for me, to actually have someone there to talk me through it. I love the look of knitting, but I am not a very experienced knitter. I can do the most basic things, and there are little bits of it that get a little bit frustrating to me. So let me show you some knitting. So The big difference for me between knitting and crochet is that for knitting, your work is attached to your tool. So like you use knitting needles. So like it has a stopper on one end and the point on the other. And the point is what you're using. Like you're using you're using 2 needles and you're manipulating the yarn, but you're manipulating the yarn onto one of the needles. So the needle is always attached to your piece. And I find that a little bit cumbersome. Not like crochet where you can easily detach, like your tool doesn't need to be attached to your piece. But I enjoy the look of it. So like, doesn't that look really neat? It looks really tidy. Crochet is kind of like bumpy and curvy and messy looking. Not messy looking maybe, but it's just got a different look to it. It's not smooth. And even the way knitting looks amazing. Knitting comes down to 2 basic stitches, and you can do tons with just those basic stitches. So if you look there, see how these kind of look like these upside down V's? I mean, I could hold them this way and they look like V's. Do they look like V's? Yeah, I mean, kind of. Do you kind of see how they look like V's upside down? That's called a stockinette stitch. It's a basic knitting stitch. And then these ones that are bumps are called purls. My knitting teacher taught me that, think of a bump looking like a purl, that's how you know that it's a purl stitch. So if you know how to make the V's, which is a basic knit stitch, and if you know how to make the basic purl stitch, you can alternate those and just create a whole bunch of stuff. So for example, I've got purl stitches here to make edges, and then I've got knitting in the middle, and then every like 10 or 12 rows, I do another purl, like a full row of purl. So see how it creates a pattern? It's just using basic stitches. Like I made this up. This wasn't a pattern I followed. I just made this up. So if you know basic knitting and basic purl stitches, you can create your own pattern. And that's basically all I do with knitting. Like what I'm about to show you is just like variations on this, basically. So for example, on this one, I could probably use this as a scarf. Okay, let me show it to you first. This one's cool because it looks cool on both sides. So see, it's the same thing. See how all these bumpy stitches on this side and on this side? I did mostly purls, but then I did a little bit of a panel of the knit stitch to make this pattern in there. So see how it creates kind of interesting texture? And all I'm doing is using those basic 2 stitches. When you look at the reverse of it, does it look the same? Yeah, it does. It's reversible. So it looks the same on both sides. And then this actually, on this one that I just showed you, and on this one, I'm very much a one-trick pony with my color ideas for knitting and crochet. It's 2 colors used together. So it's a cream, like an ecru, combined with this gray. This one down here, I continued the cream, but I swapped it out for a lighter gray. And then I changed other colors too. See, mustard? I'm just using 2 yarns together. And that's what I did for this one too. I used a gray and a light blue together. And I got that idea from one of my go-to crochet books, which is this one. It's Vanna's Choice. You remember Vanna White? Vanna's Choice? She made this book. When is the copyright on this? 2007. So I've had this for a while, but this is my go-to book for a lot of crochet ideas. But I also got that idea of just using the 2 kind of contrasting yarns together. I can't show too much because the pattern actually is in here. From this, she has an Afghan where she does that. She has alternating rows where you're just switching out, like you keep one of the colors the same, but then when you go to the next row, you swap out one of the colors. So it looks like that. So now I do that a lot. I like the contrasting colors, and it creates kind of interesting color changes. And it's a good way to, when you can't decide what color yarn to use, now you can throw in a whole bunch of colors into the same project. She has a really good, the other reason why I love this book, in the back of it, it's got a stitch dictionary. I won't be able to hold up very much of it because it shows, so like, she'll show you how to do different stitches and different squares in the back. I love it. And like how to lay out different squares, the colors of different squares. This was like a foundational book for me. I really enjoyed using that, and I get a lot of it even today. If I get stuck, I kind of look at that for inspiration, for color inspiration. I'll show you another knitted item that's basically another kind of play on knit and purl stitches. This one here, this is another, so this is from the Kieran cake that I showed you before, these kind of alternating gray-blue colors. And same idea here. So see how there's purl stitches here, the bumpy purl stitches, followed by knit, and then more purl and then knit. So I just created kind of a ribbed pattern. And I alternated the length, the width of the ribs on there. I don't know if you're here. Are you hearing Steve? He's watching either cycling or soccer up there. So you might hear some shouting. But anyway, so yeah, and then I just have like an edge garters. This is called garter stitch. When you do only these bumpy stitches, that's called a garter stitch. So garter stitch on the edge. And stitching like this is also really easy stitching. Like you don't have to follow a pattern. Like none of these came from patterns, right? It's just me making up alternating knit and purl stitches. So it's nice to not have to keep looking at a pattern. I struggle with, I think lace knitting is really beautiful. There's so many beautiful knitting patterns, but I'm terrible at following a pattern. I get lost, or like I'm watching TV or something and then I get distracted. And I've started so many knitting projects that I've just totally pulled out because I've missed stitches, or I forgot, I skipped a row even, or so I'm just not a very conscientious knitter, so it's it creates problems. I'll show you one more. This is also just a variation on knit and purl. What might I have done here? I think it's knitting, but then there's just one single purl in between that creates these vertical rows. I just changed the stitch for one stitch. So like knit, 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 and then purl, knit, 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 and then purl. And that creates this alternating pattern. So see how much you can do with just 2 basic stitches? It's really, you can do a lot. This is a scarf too. I mostly knit scarves. This is kind of neat because it was knit using a sock yarn. So the stitches are super tiny and dainty. And then it also has self-striping. Like if I had used this in a sock, this probably would have been like the foot of it or the heel of it or something. I'm not sure. But sock yarns are striped so that when you're knitting the sock, different parts of the sock, turn out different colors. But if you use those for a scarf, then you've got a stripy scarf. And then if you add a basic knit and purl kind of alternating pattern, you've got some texture there too. So I really enjoy using the only issue both with crochet and knitting is that if you use a sock yarn, because it's so thin, the yarns are very thin, it just takes a long time because the stitches are so small. It's really, really small stitches. What else can I show you? Have I shown you? I'm just grabbing random bits of stuff now that are both knit and crochet. This was just a basic granny square crochet. I'll hold it up closer. But this now was using a sock yarn. So see all these color changes? I didn't make these color changes. It kind of striped itself because the sock yarn had changing colors in it. So it's kind of neat. Instead of that other pink square I showed you where I did change the color, I deliberately used different colors for different parts. This one just kind of, the colors are randomly there based on what's happening in the yarn. So I encourage you to try some sock yarn, projects for stuff other than socks. Look at this little guy I found. This is from, hang on, I have it open. I'm going to look real quick. Danger Crafts on Etsy. And he's called Maddox, the mischievous monster. He does not have a face or arms yet. Clearly, I just did his body and then stopped for some reason. But this was going to be part of a gift, probably for my nephews, but they're grown up now. So when they were babies, I think I was intending to make them little monsters. It is kind of cute though, right? But see the V's in it? It's basic knitting. It's just a basic knit stitch. You just, it had directions for either adding more stitches to make this wide or decreasing the stitches to make it more narrow. And then the same thing with the legs, I think. So this is something like this is pretty adventurous for me. I don't usually do, like I said, following a pattern. And then the other thing I haven't done much of is using circular needles. So like usually if you're knitting something that has that stitches around like this is stuffed with fiberfill, you would normally use a circular needle and just kind of work your way up like that. I don't do much with circular needles. Instead, I knit it flat just with 2 regular needles, and then I have a seam. I seam it in the back. I do that with cowls and things too. Like I struggle with circular needles, so I just knit it flat and then put a seam in it. Let me see what else I can show you. Oh, I put aside an example of why knitting becomes a nightmare for me. So I had started making a top, a knit top. And you can tell like this ribbed part down here, that was going to be the waist, where the waist goes. And then I had started working on the body. And then probably I got impatient or something, or I don't know. I needed the needles for something else I must have been working on. So I took this project off the needle so I could go use it for something else. And then I left it. This is my nightmare. Like basically if I was to continue this, I would have to put all these little things back onto the needle, all these stitches, and see how some of them, like this guy over here, he's starting to disappear. He's starting to like lose himself into the rest. I think that's what we call a dropped stitch. And it is just looking at this is totally my nightmare. Like I'm never going to go back to this. I would just restart it. Because I don't know. And I don't even know like which direction to put the hook back in. I wasn't paying attention to any of that. It does look pretty good, right? It gives me confidence that I would like maybe try a knitted top again, but I would have to have a dedicated set of needles for it. I have another crochet thing to show you, and then I have something awesome to show you. So this is the Mallory Cal. So crocheters and knitters use, they have like crochet alongs and stitch alongs, just like we do. So for cross stitch. So ours is a sal, right? Stitch along. In crochet, it's a cal, a crochet along. And so this was from a crochet along. Isn't that so pretty? These wavy stitches. It's called the Mallory Cal, and it's by Ellery Schoenfield, I think is her name. I'll put her info down below if you're interested. But she did a crochet along where it was like once a week or maybe once every 2 weeks. She gave the pattern for a new row to add to a blanket. It's supposed to be a blanket pattern. So each week you would have a different pattern, so that when you finish your blanket, it's got rows of all these different patterns that you've stitched on. So I just started the first pattern, like from the first week, and I really loved how it looked, like these kind of waves. So I'm just turning this into a cowl. I made it smaller. I'm using a sock yarn. This is by Brine Dye Works. And it's, I'll hold up the colors. These are the colors for it. It came in a set, Brine Dye Works. They're from Canada. I found out about them through Shiloh, Cross Stitch MD. I think a lot of you watch her too. You know, she's amazing. For knitting, she's amazing. Like the amount of knitting she's able to do in a short amount of time. It would take me years to accomplish like one of those knitting projects. But this is crochet, and I had to get this yarn from Brine Dye Works because I think her name is Charity at Brine Dye Works. She dyes her own yarn. And she does these these film themed sets. And she had created a set for a French film called Amélie, which you may or may not know. It was a really popular film from like the early 2000s. And I used to teach a class on that film. So I was like, ooh, I have a special connection to it. So I wanted to get that yarn. And that film is known for, during the editing process, they deepened and brightened all of their red and green hues. So like a lot of them would wear red or green clothes, or like if they were outside, the reds and greens in nature. So it has kind of a dreamy quality to it, that movie, but it's because they played with the colors. So she created a set that has reds and greens kind of inspired by that film. The only issue is that now it's looking a little Christmassy because of the reds and greens, which is fine. I'll just make it cowls I will only wear in the winter anyway. But I'm loving this stitch. I just think it's so, so pretty. So I'm just going to keep going. It's a very relaxing stitch. And you can find, I think you can still find the patterns for each of the rows on that crochet along. She released them on her Instagram page as like image files. So like it would be an image file with the directions for the stitch. So if you look at her Instagram feed, it would just have all the stitch, like the directions for each of the stitches. So if you're a crocheter or want to take a look at that, I'll link that below. You can check that out. Okay, so I have something awesome to show you. And it's what I've been working on the most recently, starting a little bit, probably last fall is when I was really working on this. So let me show you an example. Okay, take a look at this. So do you see the V-shaped stitches? So you would think that it's knitting, right? Because of all the little V's. It's not. It's crochet. It's Tunisian crochet, which is my new favorite thing to do. So Tunisian crochet produces a stitch that looks like knitting, but you're using a hook. And the only thing is, Tunisian crochet is kind of, you can think of it as a cross between knitting and crochet. So like here's the hook, right? You see my hook there. And I have it I have an extender on it. It's like a wire with a stopper on the end. I get all my these nice wooden hooks and crochet. I have knitting needles like this too. They come from Knit Picks. I love they have like different color wood tools that I really like. And I like their hook because it has a deep part to it. It's good at grabbing the yarn. So I really like that. So Tunisian crochet is a cross between crochet and knitting. You do use a hook to manipulate the stitches, but temporarily, just for like, so you work a row and then back and then another row and back. You're working in kind of these 2-row segments, forward and back. On the forward, you actually your work hangs onto the hook like it does on knitting. But then on the return, you unhook it, you attach it. So it's temporarily your piece, your crocheted piece, like this piece, if I was going to do the next row, when I do the next row forward, it would be attached to my hook. And then as I work the way back, I would slowly take it off the hook. And it produces a stitch that looks basically like knitting. So it has the neat look of knitting without the headache of knitting. It's for someone like me who finds manipulating a crochet hook much easier. This is so easy, and you get like the same results as knitting. The only thing is you can't do exactly identical stitches, but you can do similar stitches. So I did this little piece here. See how you can still create some interesting textures? So like, let me see if I can point them out. So like right here, that's the Tunisian crochet knit stitch, just like I had on this cowl I'm working on there. This, I think, might be a Tunisian crochet ribbed stitch because it's got the V's for knitting, but then these kind of bumpy, that's their version of a purl. It's not as bumpy as a purl, but it's textured. But you can see the V's in front of it too. And then I did a little more Tunisian crochet knit stitch here, and then a little bit more rib here. And then I don't know what I have. I was experimenting, so I did some different things. Oh, I know what I did. I just did some regular crochet in here too. See how there's the vertical or the horizontal bar and then the teeth? So I was just playing with some different stitches with this. So I love this. I mean, it's so easy. So this sample, I just was practicing stitches on just a plain old crochet hook because see how it can hang on to that. So you don't need if you're just making like a headband or something, like if you've never Tunisian crocheted before, first of all, I will put the video. There's a go-to video that I use. Like if I've been away from Tunisian crochet and I just need a quick refresher on how to do the foundation row or anything, it's my go-to video. It's, I not going to remember the person's name, and I feel embarrassed because I depend on this video so much, but I will link it below. But her video is fantastic. It's a perfect demo. It's the clearest demonstration with like very good video quality to show you exactly where to put your hook, exactly what to do. And so if you want to practice Tunisian crochet, all you need is just a basic usual crochet hook, and your stitches can hang on to, like, you know how when you work a forward row, they have your work gets hung on to your hook. This is enough space. A regular hook is enough space for you to do some practice, just like this. And then when you when you work the other part of the row, you'll undo it. Keep working it on and off the hook. So I just love it. That's my tummy growling. I just love this so much. So I've just been on a cowls kick. I've just been making cowls that are Tunisian crochet, and I'll try to put a picture. If I can find, I'm sure I have one because I put one on Instagram. I Tunisian crocheted a beautiful cowl for my sister for her birthday. Her birthstone is amethyst. So for her birthday this year, I put a whole bunch of kind of purple themed items into her like gift box. And, so I had used one of those Karen Cakes yarns. Let me see if I have it. Isn't this a beautiful color combo? This isn't the one I used for my sister. But I love, see all these different colors. Like I would never think to put these colors together. I don't know what I should make with this. I have 2 of this color and I want to do something, maybe a shawl or something. I don't know. This is the color I used for my sister's cowl. See how it has all these purples and then a nice contrasting yellow too. So I made a Tunisian crochet cowl for her, and it was beautiful. I just knit it. I have this one I can show you kind of. This is a much bigger cowl, but I basically just do Tunisian crochet, just like a big flat piece like this, and then I seam it. This one's unfinished, but then I do a seam on the end. Now, Tunisian crochet has one tiny issue, which is that the ends get kind of curly. And that's why I try to only crochet stuff that I can later seam together, because that curliness goes away once you seam the end. But other than that, it's a dream. So like, look at this. This was all Tunisian crocheted. See how it looks like knitting when you turn it sideways? But it's using that same Tunisian crochet hook. And I just love it. I love the way it looks, and it's super, super easy to do. Very easy to do. Anyway, so I made my sister a cowl with this color. And then I made myself a winter cowl. I don't have that here. I didn't pull it out. But I've been on a cowl kick, and I'm a Tunisian crochet kick. So that's what I've been working on. So this current one I'm working on, the yarn I found through Michelle G, Bendy Stitchy. She got one of those, they do these advent calendar boxes where you sign up ahead of time, and then it comes in a box, and there are 24 individually wrapped little mini skeins of yarn. Those are a little bit expensive for me. I haven't done one of those, but I did look. She got hers from Dragon Horde Yarn, which is a beautiful yarn dyeing company. I'll show you a pack of yarn that I got from them. See these dreamy colors? And these are just like mini skeins. These I got on sale, like post-Christmas sale from their website. These are probably some of the colors that they used in that advent calendar, and they were just selling their extras. The only issue with this, all of their color themes are fantasy themed, which I love. They're beautiful colors, and I love the names are kind of fun. This set was a Harry Potter themed one, which, I mean, knowing now I'm not, I'm with all of you crafters in solidarity. I won't be supporting or advertising that brand and that person anymore, but I have these, so I'm going to use them. I'll just be careful about it in the future to not get that anymore. So I'm just alternating the colors. I mean, once I run out of one skein, so like this tan color in here, that was one of those mini skeins. This pale color up here, that was one of those mini skeins. And I like the independent dyers because look at how many different colors they're able to get in just one skein versus like the Karen Cakes. I love them, but like each of these is a solid color. So then your finished project has like these solid stripes. I kind of like the variegation in these, and with a lot of independent dyers like Dragon Horde. I also like Treehouse Knits. Do I have one of their yarns here? I probably started a cowl with them too. Yeah, I did. So like this yarn is from Treehouse Knits. See all those different colors? I don't know if you're seeing that. And then this is also a cowl I started. Tunisian crochet cowl. So I just have a bunch of sock yarns and I'm making a lot of cowls, so I'm gonna be warm this winter, that's for sure. But it's a really enjoyable stitch, and I will link. Is it Clarice? Do you guys mind? I'm actually gonna look. I want to give credit to the person whose video I'm using for my Tunisian crochet. So I'm gonna look really quick in another tab here and then tell you who that is. Oh, Claudetta Crochet. That's her name. And her tutorial is awesome. It's very, very useful. And then once you get the hang of the basic stitch for Tunisian crochet, you could basically, I just look on YouTube. I look on YouTube for other stitches and I play around with the other stitches too. So there we have it. I think I've shown you pretty much what I have. Like I said, I didn't bring down my other crochet blankets, so maybe those will make an appearance another time. But yeah, tell me what you think. I mean, are you a crocheter? Are you a knitter? Oh, I could give you a shout out to a fantastic knitter and yarn dyer, Carly at Veggie Stitches, who I'm also going to talk about when I do my cross stitch video coming up this week. She's a new Flosstuber. So mostly she does cross stitch, but in her first video, she showed an extraordinary knit shawl. It is so beautiful. And the coolest part about it is that it's a striped shawl. All of the colors came from like natural dyes, like vegetable dyes. She dyed them herself using natural dyes. And she talks a lot about that, like sustainable dyeing, eco-friendly dyeing and things like that. So definitely, I'll link her below, and definitely that's probably one of the most beautiful knitted items that I've seen, like since starting to watch Flosstube last fall. It's so, so pretty. So check that out. Other than that, I think I've shown you everything I've got to show you for knit and crochet. I'm going to check back in with you in just a few days so that we can talk cross stitch. There will be a lot to show in that one and a lot to talk about. If you knit and crochet, I'd love to hear from you, and let me know who you are on Instagram if I don't already know you too, because I love looking at what everybody's working on too. Okay, hope everybody's having a good day, and we're going to check back in just a couple of days. Thank you so much for visiting and watching. Have a good day.